Hello everyone and welcome to the One Stop Co-op Shop. This is Colin and today I am going to do a top 10 list. I'm going to do my top 10 solo or cooperative deck builders. And if you're interested in any other ones of our top games, we have a huge list here of top games that we have. So dungeon crawlers, adventure games, cooperative games of the decade, hidden gems, there's just tons of them. Make sure to check that out here on the channel. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you a little bit about the game, tell you why I like it, and then why maybe you might not like it, so give you a little bit of both sides. With that, let's jump into number 10. Number 10 for me is Dragonfire, a 1 to 6 player game published by Catalyst Games Lab. Now, this game, what you're doing is you are a hero and you have a deck of cards that you'll start off with. As you play, you're going to purchase new cards that go directly into your hand. You will play them, they have symbols on them, and you have to defeat enemies using those specific symbols to be able to win the game. You usually have 2 to 3 different levels that you have to defeat in order to do that. Now, the game does come with a campaign. However, I'm going to highly recommend that you play it mostly as a one-off game because the campaign I don't find to be fully fleshed out. Now, later expansions might have changed that, and I just haven't played all of those. But for me, I can play that base game, and that's good enough for me. What I like so much about this game is, first of all, you do buy cards to your hand. It gives you so much more tactical choices. That card in the market is great. I'm not going to buy it and throw it in my discard pile. I'm going to put it right into my hand and I can use it the next turn. There's tons of things. You can see this card right here, Magic Missile. Tons of cards have assist abilities. I can play that on other players' turns. That's so much fun. And I should mention this is a co-op game, so you can play it solo or cooperatively. Of all the games on this list, I'd say this one is the most puzzly, and that's because all these enemies have different damage types. You can see here, this one has green, black, and colorless, so you have to do specific damage types to these enemies to be able to defeat them. The colorless ones, you can use any, and so a lot of this game is deciding, okay, with the cards in my hand, which enemy am I going to attack that A, either does the most damage, or B, is the one that's going to kill or hurt one of our heroes the most. And so it's so much fun trying to make those decisions, being like, oh, I could play this card actually as an assist on your turn to do something better or something totally different. I absolutely love that about this game. Now, I will say this game is not for you if you're looking for a campaign-styled deck builder. I've got some other ones on this list that I'd recommend way over this one. This one I find to be much better as one-offs. I also think that if you don't enjoy the trying to decide when is the most tactical time to play a specific card and, maybe on one of your turns, instead of just doing something, you might actually not do anything because you only get to draw 2 cards a turn. And so sometimes it's better to hold on to your cards and not do anything. And a lot of players don't like doing that. They would prefer to have a regular deck building experience where you draw all your cards, you play all of them, and then you discard them and draw up again. I will say I personally really like the art in Dragonfire, and that's one of the biggest reasons that I have this one now over Shadowrun Crossfire. I feel like the art is better here, but I will say the game is a little bit longer because I feel like everything has a little bit more health. You have more health, but so do the enemies. So just be wary of that. Overall, though, if you are looking for something that gives you tactical feeling, so almost like you have to decide which enemy to defeat, which card you want to play, which card you want to buy, how best to puzzle out the cards in your hand to defeat the enemies on the board, this is one that I would recommend, Dragonfire. Number 9 is Thunderstone Quest, the Barricades mode. Now, the Barricades mode can be played 1 to 6 player, published by AEG, and it can be played cooperatively or solo. Now, if you ask Mike, this is definitely not the best version of this game. However, I have played now the final version. I'll say we don't have a playthrough of the final version on the channel. This one is a print and play. I printed it out while I was on Kickstarter, but I really actually enjoyed it. Now that I've played the final production copy, what you do in this game is you will be either leveling up your heroes or you can buy new heroes, and then you can buy equipment and items and put them on them, delve into a dungeon and try and defeat a specific guardian. In the cooperative mode, what happens is each round you'll roll these guardian dice, and then as you go through, so each round, after 2 or 3 rounds, you're going to roll more guardian dice, and these dice do bad things and help the guardian, which is the enemy you want to defeat, become more powerful. And if you take too long, well, then you're going to roll more and more guardian dice, and what those guardian dice will do is all dependent upon the guardian himself, which is kind of cool. So if you look Over here, you can see if you roll these symbols against this Death Sentinel layer, they're going to do different things like add wounds or add monsters that can attack the village. And so you have to then either defeat enemies in the dungeon to try and prevent those enemies from actually hurting the village, or you take wounds, which means when you take wounds, you draw less cards. Yeah, it's a really cool mechanic. Now, the difference when you're playing the barricades mode versus competitive is that in the competitive, each turn you have to make a decision. Do I go to the village or do I go to the dungeon? In the cooperative or solo mode, you actually get to do both. Mike thinks that that's a negative. I actually like it. I like that better because the game goes faster and I find it to be more enjoyable, especially playing with other people, and you can all play simultaneously. That is a huge benefit of this game when you play cooperatively. I can play with 4 players. We all go to the village together. We all go to the dungeon. If I play with this with 4 players competitively, I'm sitting there for 3 rounds before I get to do anything. That can be really boring. What I find so much fun about this game is how your deck building works. So you will have these items or weapons. You'll attach them to heroes that are in your hands. You have to make sure you have a good combination of heroes and items and weapons that you can equip to your heroes. And then when you do that, you'll get to draw more cards maybe, you'll get to do a specific effect. But you can see now these heroes both have these knives and their attacks are added up to being 2 each, which is really cool. And because that these knives have the effect that while you're in the dungeon, if you do that, you get to draw additional cards. So now I've got more adventures. I just find that to be really fun. Also, I love that you will start with these basic adventures, but then you can level them up, especially as they defeat enemies. So for an example, here we have a level 1 adventure that we're going to spend 2 XP and we're going to level it up now from that to something much cooler. Oh, look at Linja. And so I think that's so cool, that idea of you can level up the heroes that are within your deck. You can also purchase them. You can see down here there's a cost. You can kind of see that. But so it's a really cool way of having your deck level up in 2 different ways. One, you're going to be buying cards from the marketplace like items, weapons, and all of that. But then 2, you can level up the heroes in your deck as you go. Barricades mode also added these new classes. So for an example, in our playthrough, I had one of our players be the town guard, and they give you different ways that you can gain abilities, level up. You have different ways that you can interact with one another. Because in competitive play, you have lots of things you can use XP for that maybe is not as useful in cooperative play. It gives you more reasons to use XP because you have to use XP to level up your prestige class or basic class. Now you can see right here, this is the board of the Guardian, and you can see how many dice you roll at the beginning of each of your turns. As that threat tracker goes up, you're going to roll more dice. After a specific amount of rounds, you'll flip this over and all of a sudden the Guardian's there and you can actually take them down. But you have to be able to go all the way to the back end of the dungeon, so that means you need enough light to do that. You need enough heroes to be able to defeat them. Yeah, I feel like this is one of those games where if you delve into it, it could be so much fun. Now, though, let's talk about the drawbacks. So if you're looking for this only for solo or co-op, I will say the game was not designed initially as that. And you can tell. There are certain things that your abilities of cards or something, they don't make sense. Or you could buy a card that gives you victory points but doesn't do much. And so it's why would I even buy that, right? So you can definitely tell the game was not designed ground up as a cooperative game. And that's a bummer, and that could be a negative. They also don't provide any sort of, hey, this is the marketplace you should use against this Guardian for a fun cooperative experience. No, they just give you the stuff and you can decide if you want to do a random setup of the marketplace, which I actually don't recommend because I've done that a few times and you know what happens? You get things that don't synergize and it's not fun. What I do recommend is I've been going through the quests in the basic quest book for the competitive games, and I'm just doing that, but then playing it as a cooperative game experience. And so far, it's been working. 1 or 2 times I've switched out one card because it may be mostly better for competitive play, and just swap it out with another random card or a card that maybe I want to try. That's what I would recommend there, is at least start there if you're interested in playing this game. And finally, I will say this is an older style deck builder. You're going to buy everything, it goes to your discard pile. Then you're going to shuffle up, you randomly get stuff, and it's not nearly as tactical as something like Dragonfire or other games in our list. Definitely the new thing has been when you buy cards, they go to your hand, and I really like that. And so this one, you don't get that experience, which is fine, but I do wish that I had that. So there you have it. That's number 9, Thunderstone Quest with the Barricades mode expansion. Number 8, Xenoshift Dreadmire. I feel like this is another one that kind of flew under the radar. It's a 1 to 4 player game published by Cool Mini or Not. Do you see any minis? I don't either. I don't know why Cool Mini or Not chose to do this one, but they did. So it is a card-based deck builder, but it's very unique in how you deck build in the game. So instead of you buying cards that give you gold to be able to then buy more cards, you actually just gain what's called Xenoxanthem each round. You'll then use that to then buy units and to buy items. And this game, once again, you buy to your hand. I love that. So it's very tactical. Which ones do I want to buy? Which ones are useful now? You'll then place them out onto this blue board in an order that you choose. This one being the front and this area being the back. Then you're going to fill this up with aliens. And the aliens are going to attack and you're going to try and defend the base. So it is essentially a castle defense game, although you're defending a base against these aliens that are attacking you. Now, what's really cool about the game is there's 3 stages. Each stage, you're going to get more difficult enemies, but also you'll get more units that are available to you that are stronger and better. And unlike most deck builders where, oh man, now I've got these basic cards, and how do I get them out of my deck? I have to find a way to destroy them. No, this game has a way that auto upgrades them. I can burn my lower level units to actually make the more upgraded units cheaper. My Xenoxanthem, that is only a 1 cost. When I get to the level or stage 2 and I can get the 3 cost ones, all those level 1 ones convert together into level 3 Xenoxanthem. So the deck automatically upgrades itself. Really cool. And then what's fun is if, let's say, you actually are able to keep any of your units on the board without them getting killed by the aliens, they'll be there for the next round. So you have lots of strategy on, okay, do I want to try and save this unit or do I not? Where do I want to put this unit? Because some aliens will attack from the back, some will attack from the front. You don't know, and that's what's so much fun. I also love how cooperative it is, because when I am playing, I can activate abilities on another player's board. So if they have a unit that says, hey, this unit is able to automatically do 2 damage to any revealed alien, well, they can do that to the one in your row. So you can see here I'm playing a 2-player game and there's 2 different rows here. We could have someone on this side do an ability to help this row, which is really cool. I love how cooperative the game is, and you each have your own special abilities plus your own deck. It's very cooperative, but it's also just a solid deck builder. I feel like not enough people talk about this game. However, there are some definite drawbacks. The first thing is, it's Cool Mini or Not. There's tons of things that are promos that are hard to find that add to the game substantially. For example, there are legendary heroes. So if your hero takes damage or attacks and doesn't die, in the Kickstarter, you could get these legendary heroes that then could be upgraded onto your actual board. Well, you can't get that anymore. You'd have to get it on the secondary market. Same thing with legendary weapons and items. I just feel like all these things should have been included or just had been an expansion that you could buy, and a lot of them aren't. And so you might feel like you don't have the full experience for that. Also, if you are going to play this as a cooperative game, beware. It can be long because you're supposed to each individually reveal your aliens. So, okay, I'll go first and I have to reveal all 4 of mine before you go. Takes way too long. If you're going to play with 3 players or even 4 players, you're going to have people falling asleep at the table. I recommend that everyone reveals their first alien at the same time, and then you deal with it. Then you go to the second alien, you reveal it, and you do it together, because that is, I just think it'll be faster. I have had great experiences with that. You can still interact, but then that means that people aren't just sitting there doing nothing. Finally, I will say there are 2 versions of the game. There's Dreadmire and there's Onslaught, and to tell you which one is better, I don't know. Dreadmire, they have some new rules that you can port into Onslaught, which actually makes Onslaught really good. And Dreadmire adds something that I don't love, and that's this weather mechanic. So there are weapons and enemies that will get different benefits or detriments depending upon this random weather event deck that you just flip and it goes, oh, well, apparently it's foggy. I don't really love that, but I do love the different alien types because you've got the Dreadmire aliens versus the Onslaught aliens, and then there's another type that I can't even remember at this point. But yeah, I definitely recommend checking this one out if you like the idea of tower defense, very unique battle line mechanic, and a really unique and very interesting deck building mechanic as well. That is Xenoshift Dreadmire. Number 7, Legendary Encounters Alien. This is an awesome thematic deck builder. 1 to 4 players, published by Upper Deck Games. It is fully cooperative. There is a competitive variant where you can have someone play the queen. Never going to play that. I will say this game, although if you don't like the Alien universe, you can still enjoy this game because I have never seen the movies, and full disclosure, I'm never going to. I'm not interested in it, and yet I can still love this game. So you'll start off just like most deck builders with a very basic deck. You have 6 grunts and 6 specialists, and then you have 1 or 2 special cards for your specific character, and you're off to the races. What you will do is you will draw up to your hand size, which is usually a 6. You might have things that can affect that. You look to see how many recruit symbols versus how many attack. You can see here I've got tons of recruit, no attack. It's the beginning of the game. Then what you'll do is you'll take 1 card, move it into the area here. The first one is the ventilation shafts, but it comes face down. I love this. I love the encounters effects on how this works. You have to scan. You can see here you have to use 4 fight to be able to flip that card up, and it could be an alien, it could be an event, it could be a hazard. You don't know. And if you do nothing with it and it goes all the way through this area in the complex, then it will come into the combat zone and it could potentially attack you. Who knows what it's going to do? So you have to use your combat either to fight aliens, or you have to do them to complete objectives. And then you use your recruit symbols to recruit new cards into your deck, but also you can use your recruit symbols to complete objectives as well. You don't know what type of objectives they are. And from what I understand, they did a great job of porting the movies into the game itself. So things happen and you go, oh yeah, that happened in the movies. I wouldn't know, I haven't seen it. But still think that's really cool how that works. What I like so much about this game is just how this complex area works and how thematic and how tense it can feel. See how this enemy just showed up, didn't know what it was, all of a sudden, boom, this alien comes out, and now characters can't be recruited. And you have to do 4 fight to be able to defeat them. But I also have all these enemies still up in the complex that I have to deal with. And it looks like we have an objective up there. I love how there's all these different things that can happen, and you can port them all together in different ways, and it provides a very thematic, fun experience. The deck building isn't challenging. You can play this with people that haven't played a ton of games, and they'll fully understand how it works within a round or two. It's not overly complex. It's not like Marvel. If you've ever played Marvel Legendary and there's 8 jillion keywords, there's only a few keywords here, and I appreciate that because it's easier to get to the table and play with pretty much anyone. I will say for negatives or reasons you might not like this is definitely on the more archaic side of deck building. You will be putting cards into your discard pile when you buy them, and then you're just going to hope you can draw them. There is very minimal destruction in the game for cards, and so what that means is you're going to, at the end of the game, get very frustrated with those specialists and grunts because they're going to show up in your hand all the time, and it's going to be hard to get rid of them. Also, I'll say that after you've played through all of the movies, you definitely can play through all of them again, but you know what's going to happen, and that does take a little bit away from the game. But I'll say I've played all of them. I could play all of them again now, especially with how many games I have, and it won't stop me from enjoying it. So, yeah, if you like the theme, this is a no-brainer. Even if you don't like the theme, but you like thematic games and you like tense games, because yeah, when that final boss comes or whatever it is, that final objective comes, it is almost always tense. I've never had it in this game where it's a walk in the park. It's always fun and challenging, and a lot of times you lose, which is, I think, good. I think especially with the theme that they're doing here, it makes total sense. But yeah, that is Legendary Encounters Alien. Still one of the best deck builders in my opinion. Number 6, we have Shadow Rift. This is a 1 to 6 player game. It's cooperative or solo, published by Game Knights Production. This is the 2nd edition. There's a 1st edition and a 2nd edition. The 2nd edition added the board and some not really new art. Yeah, I'll say right now, there's a negative. Look at the terrible art. These cards, I mean, especially comparing them to some of these other games that we see, these newer ones, so much of the card isn't art. And if you look at that Mike card, look at, there's no art. It's just a little, I don't know, what is that? Just a 1? Okay, fine. But in this game, what you're trying to do is you're trying to protect a village. That village is being attacked by these monsters, and they're going to come down this row. And as they come out, you can try and defeat them. You have a certain amount of rounds before they then come and essentially attack the village. village. When they are attacking the village, they're going to push up the power of the monsters. And if that gets pushed up too high and you've got too many monsters coming in here, they're going to kill your villagers. And how you lose the game, it's actually a very interesting way that you lose. You lose when your entire village here is filled up with corpses, because basically you've lost all of the people in the village. This, once again, is a general deck builder. You're going to start off with basic cards in your hand. You've got some prowess, an explorer, you have a strike, and that's pretty much all that you have. And what you're going to do is you're going to buy cards from the market and then attack those monsters as they come out. Unlike most deck builders, there is no elimination of cards in your deck. However, whenever you defeat enemies and you start gaining heroism, what you'll be able to do is just draw more cards. It was a definite... I thought it was kind of interesting. At first I didn't like it, but I ended up really enjoying it because it means that those basic cards aren't as bad, because yeah, I might draw just a prowess, but if I draw a might or if I draw a heroism, I'll be able to just draw more cards, and then it gives me more of the currency that I need to buy cards. And I'll say that's the other fun part about this game. You have multiple currencies. Usually when you think of a deck builder, just like the last one we talked about, you have recruit to buy cards and you have attack to attack the monsters. Here you have attack to attack the monsters, but you've got lots of different currencies. You have magic, you have coins, and you have prowess. Now you can buy coins with prowess, and then coins can be shared among all players, which is really cool. It allows you to cooperate a little bit. If someone needs to buy something and needs a coin, you can use your prowess to buy the coin and they can get it. Oh, that is something else that's a huge pro of this game: simultaneous play. You're all going to play at the same time, then the new monsters come out, and then you're going to play again. I will also say the best part of this game is down here, the villagers. These villagers all give you special abilities, and they can do really cool things. The guards can protect other villagers. The stonemason can help you build walls cheaper. The farmer will give you more prowess. Really cool. But then those monsters kill them. And so when they get killed, you know, all of a sudden, instead of having one of those come out, a corpse comes out. And you really feel like you're losing your village as the game goes, because all of a sudden you'll get more and more corpses in your deck. And then you can try and recruit anybody that's traveling. You've got 2 travelers. You can see them up here. Each round you'll reveal 2 travelers. You can say, hey, grave digger, come into our town and help us out. So you can try and recruit those villagers as well as trying to level up your deck. And you have to balance all of that. You also have to balance defeating the enemies versus there's shadow rifts in here. How you win the game is 2 different ways. You have to either seal all the shadow rifts, and there's shadow rifts equal to the number of players, or you have to build all of the walls, and that basically builds a wall all the way around the town to protect it. I really like that you have these different options. However, almost all the time you go for sealing the shadow rifts. There's a couple occasions where going for the walls works, but the walls are so expensive, and some of the enemies can even destroy or break walls that it just a lot of times doesn't feel worth it. Now, I will say this game is not for you if you don't like shuffling cards. You're going to have to shuffle your decks, and if you're playing solo with 2 characters, you're going to have to shuffle 2 of those. You'd have to shuffle the village decks. Every time the village deck is emptied, you have to shuffle that. There's lots of shuffling in the game. Also, without the Archfiend expansion, which is somewhat difficult to find, you don't have a boss fight at the end. As long as you defeat those or seal those 2 shadow rifts, done. And that can be kind of anticlimactic, or you build the walls. But it's really fun if you add the Archfiend expansion. It's just a little bit harder to find, because after that happens, you then go against a boss. It does make the game longer, but it is pretty dang cool. I don't have a playthrough on the channel of that. And finally, I think they really missed the mark on giving you the opportunity to actually be a player. It doesn't feel like you're a person protecting the village. It feels like you're just kind of playing cards and saying, hey, traveler, help me, or hey, merchant, will you give me a coin? I feel like they could have made us as characters, giving us an ability, making us tied maybe even to one of these villagers. And if the villager gets killed, then something negative happens to you. There's so many things they could have done there that they didn't, and it's just a bummer. But yeah. Overall, though, I still really enjoy it. I feel like this is one of the better defending a village board games that you'll see that's a deck builder. So that is Shadow Rift. Number 5, we have The Loop. This is a 1 to 4 player game. It's fully cooperative or solo, published by Catch Up Games. This is a new one that it's not even fully available yet in the US. It will be soon, I think actually in August, so this month. Hopefully you guys, if you like what you see here, you can get a copy. This game is so cool. It reminds me of an upgraded, better Pandemic. So what you're going to be doing is you are a character. You're moving around these different eras. So these are all different eras in the timeline of the universe. And you're trying to stop Dr. Fu from whatever his plan is. And you've got these missions you need to complete as a team. In my playthrough, I actually do a solo playthrough of the game. You control 3 different characters, but it actually works out really well. I love the solo variant. It doesn't feel overwhelming. And so what you do is for each of your characters, you're going to have a set of 6 cards that they start with. However, unlike most deck builders where you start with 6 basic cards, each single card is unique. Every character feels very different from every other character, and that's initially right off the get-go, and I love that. I love when immediately when I start the game, I'm already differentiated from my other players, especially in a cooperative game. What you'll do then is you'll draw the top 3 cards of your deck like this. You'll place them out on the table, and everyone has their top 3 cards, kind of like your hand, right on the table. When you get to activate, you'll then exhaust these cards to use their abilities and move around the board, trying to complete those missions, stop Dr. Fu, get rid of the duplicates, whatever you need to do to be able to survive. When you end your turn, if you end your turn in an era that has a card in that space, you then can take that card and put it on top of your deck. Basically, you will be able to play it the next turn, which is cool. Once again, a new twist on deck building that's become kind of a standard. You get the cards right away instead of putting it in your discard pile. Love it. So the crux of the game is you are moving around these different eras of time, trying to complete certain objectives, stopping Dr. Fu. He's got duplicates on the board. You need to move to certain areas. You've got energy on the board that you can use to move around the board. You've got all of these rift tokens that if you get too many of them, just like Pandemic, you have a bad event that happens there, and if it happens a second time, you lose the game. How you win the game is just by completing 4 missions. Just like many cooperative games, there are 3 different ways that you can lose. You can see them right up here. If that happens, you lose the game. Basically, you're just trying to complete those sabotage tiles to win. I feel like the game is easy for anyone to learn how to play, yet it is challenging enough that gamers can have fun playing it. You also have a really fun mechanic called the loop, where if you've used all of your cards, but you're in a location with an energy, you can use that energy to refresh all of your cards that are the same dimension type. You can see that there's a symbol up here on the top left-hand side of the card. If I decided to do a loop, I could ready all cards with one specific dimension type. Now these 2 are black holes, so I can't ready them. That usually means these cards are more powerful because they're only a one-time a turn effect. This one though, I could potentially do a loop to ready this one again and then play it again, and then I'd exhaust it and do the ability. Then if I'm in a space that has 2 energy, I can use the 2 energy to then ready it again and do it a third time. So there's a lot of fun of moving around the board, trying to manipulate where your energy is so you can utilize the cards that you have. There's also tons of cards that let you actually use the cards of your other players, and then they'll have to discard it, but then they'll redraw up before they get to activate. Just tons of ways to cooperate. It's got 3 different modes of play. Actually, I think it's 4 different modes of play. Yeah, a basic mode and 3 different modes in other types of modes. I will say this game is not for you if you're worried about an alpha gamer in your group, because everything is open information. You could have someone tell everyone what to do, or say, you know what, this is the best option. This is what you have to do. You can't do anything else. And we all know how that is. So if you have an alpha gamer in your group, not a recommend. Also, if you know, it's kind of a weird theme. It's not something, you know, if you think of Pandemic, people know, especially now, know what a pandemic is. Nobody, Dr. Fu, you might not know who that is. It might feel a little bit not like a theme you're interested in, so that might be a detriment. But really, otherwise, there's hardly anything I can say about the game that I don't like. So this one is a huge recommend for me. So that is The Loop. Number 4, we have Aeon's End, which is a 1 to 4 player cooperative game published by Indie Board and Cars or Action Phase Games. There are tons of different Aeon's Ends. I will say that is probably, I'll start off with a negative on this one. There's Outcast, there's War Eternal, there's the Legacy, there's a new Legacy that's coming out. I will say that the amount of content for this game is a little bit overwhelming. Where to start, it all depends upon what you want. If you're looking, and this is where I was going to talk about legacy games, if you're looking for a really fun and not very long legacy game that is deck building, I highly recommend this Aeon's End Legacy as your first experience of Aeon's End. If you've already played Aeon's End, though, I don't recommend a Legacy because it kind of takes a step back and starts you over as if you'd never played the game. And so the first 3 or 4 out of the 7 missions aren't even that much fun because you don't have the full breadth of Aeon's End itself. So if you're just starting, Legacy all the way. If you already played and you're trying to decide which one to buy, I'd actually go Outcast. I think Outcast gives a good challenge, but also isn't too challenging to find, and it gives you a good starting point. It's got treasures and all of that stuff as well. So that's where I would recommend starting. Now let's talk about the game itself. So Aeon's End, you are a mage and you're trying to defeat some sort of boss, nemesis. Each time you play, you'll have a different boss and you're trying to protect Gravehold. What you're doing, you'll start off with a basic set of cards with maybe 1 or 2 that are unique to your specific mage. Your mage also has a special ability that can only be used if you charge it. If you charge it up, you have to spend your money. So instead of buying cards from your market, you're going to spend money on your ability. And then once you have enough charges, you can activate it. You're going to be casting spells. And the best part and most unique part about this game is you do not shuffle your deck. You will buy into the discard pile. So you still buy your cards to the discard pile. However, when your deck is emptied and you need to draw, you just take your discard pile, flip it over, and it becomes your deck. So all of a sudden, how you discard cards, where you play your cards, how you're going to do stuff with your cards actually matters, which is very unique. I have not seen that in any other deck builder, and I really like that. So the fun part is trying to decide, especially because of the different phases of the game, you cast spells first before you start playing cards from your hand. So when you cast, if you cast 4 spells in a row, well, then you're going to have 4 spells in your deck in a row. And so you need to take that into account when you cast your spells. Also, you start off, and you can see up here, you start off with not all of your breaches open, so you can't cast 4 spells in a row. You have to spend ether to open up those breaches. So although there's only one currency in this game, it's ether, and then there's the spells that do damage. You have so many different things you can use your ether for. Do I use it to focus or open a breach? Do I use it to power up my ability, or do I use it to power up my deck? And you only have a limited amount of time before that nemesis starts getting super powerful. And that's the goal, is you have to defeat the nemesis. The nemesis will throw out some minions to try and distract you, as well as events that you'll have to deal with. But the overall goal is you need to defeat that nemesis. And how you're going to do that is with, you can see these spells. Of course, that one does 1 damage. Whoop-de-doo. This game does have a static marketplace, unlike, let's say, Legendary Encounters Alien, where you have a rolling 5 cards and you don't know what's going to come up. This one, you always know the cards that are available to you. The other final unique, and sometimes I like and sometimes I don't like, is the turn order in the game. You will randomly draw who's going to go next, so you don't know when your turn is going to be. You also don't know when the nemesis is going to activate. It felt very innovative when it first came out, and I loved it. The more I play the game, especially at higher player counts, the less I like it. So I've played it 4-player, where I was the first to go in one round and the last to go in the next round. That means I waited 10 turns before I got to go the next time. And at that time, the nemesis had gone 4 times. And so by the time I got to go, I had to discard cards. I had, anyways, I feel like the turn order was a really cool idea, but depending upon player count, it doesn't work as well. If you're looking for a deck builder that actually feels tactical and strategical on how you play and discard your cards, this is a high recommend. If you're looking for a lighthearted game where you are slowly building your deck, having fun playing as a team, yeah, this isn't for you. It's a very tight game. The Nemesis can be a challenge. Almost all of them are a challenge and hard to defeat. And so you have to be ready to lose. Also, you have to be ready to wait for your turn. That can, depending upon player count, that can be a negative for this game as well. But yeah, that is Aeon's End. Number 3 for me is Renegade. This is a 1 to 5 player game published by Victory Point Games and designed by Ricky Royal. Yes, Ricky! He is a content creator, if you don't know. Absolutely love his work. He's one of the reasons why I started making content. So yeah, super excited when I got to play this game, and I feel like it is one of the best deck builders I have played. What you're doing in this game, you'll start off with a set of cards, and then as you play, your deck, I believe, is 15 cards. Or no, maybe it's 16. 15 or 16. I can't even remember at this point. But you start with 15 or 16 basic cards, and you're trying to go against a mother. Mother is trying to control this area, and you're moving across, trying to defeat her data nodes and using your different abilities and cards to hack in, trying to complete different objectives. You'll have 3 objectives each game. 1 gold, 1 silver, 1 bronze. As you complete them, you'll set up the network, which is essentially a board. Each of these are different pieces. You'll flip them over, put them out, and you get to decide how to set them up. You'll then put out sparks, which the mother uses to control them and potentially can hurt you. And what you're trying to do is complete those 3 goals. Each time you play, those goals can be completely different. If you complete those goals, you win. Then you count up your points and you can see if you beat your previous play. Now, what makes this game so unique is that instead of you buying cards that go into your deck and then you have to find ways to destroy the cards in your deck is always the same size all the time. And that's because whenever you buy a card with a card, you then lose the card that you used to buy it with, and you put the other one directly into your hand. So cool. So you lose the ability of certain cards, but then you gain other ones. So your deck is always tight and only 15 or 16 cards. And how quickly you go through your deck is how quickly the game ends, as you can only go through your deck 3 times. So essentially you use those cards to do the certain things that you want to do on the board, and you've got to do them in that amount of time, otherwise you lose the game. But what's so much fun is that instead of you buying a ton of cards and then having a ton of stuff that you go, well, what am I going to do with this stuff? No, there's none of that, because if I'm going to buy, like this Christmas tree, I have to have 1 of each of these types of cards. I would lose 1 of the cards that I played, put this directly into my hand, and then I have it in my hand and I can use it for this round and all rounds going forward. I love this. It's almost like a deck replacement game instead of a deck builder, because you're replacing cards in your deck to make your deck of 15 or 16 cards that much better. You'll then use the cards that are in your hand to do different things. You've got the red ones here that can destroy things, your yellow ones here that can help you change sparks into data nodes that you can use to be helpful to you, and you've got your leadership ones that are wild. They can do lots of different things. Like this one says you can delete 1 spark from your partition and every partition adjacent to yours, so you can get yourself into the right spot. They've got the blue ones that also let you move across the board, and there's lots of different puzzling that you need to do, because you can put out data nodes, and if you have enough data nodes in a specific spot, so you can see I've got a red one here and a purple one. If I had 3 blue ones here, I could place a 4th to turn it into a different type of thing that I can use for the game, and it becomes something even more powerful. Now, as you can see, I'm already having a challenge trying to remember all the different names, and in this game, the hardest part is the jargon. It's really cool that Ricky has all this different jargon for Cyberpunk. You've got data nodes, sparks, you've got guardians, all this cool stuff. I can't remember the names of each thing. Just be wary of that. If you have a hard time parsing through jargon, this might not be for you. Also, you'll see, once again, this does feel a little bit more old school. The art, look at how tiny the art is compared to the card itself. You don't have to like the cyberpunk theme to like the game, but it will certainly help you understand the game. There's a lot going on here. I do recommend, if you pick this up, watch a playthrough. If you read the rulebook, it's good, but it can be a challenge to get through. So I do recommend watching Ricky's play or my play to help you with that first time that you play the game. But yeah, this is definitely a recommend for anyone that likes puzzle games that likes the deck replacement idea. So there's no card that goes wasted. There's no, why am I seeing my beginning cards anymore? No, after one round, your whole deck is almost going to be upgraded, and then you're going to upgrade it again. And that's what's so cool. That's so cool about this game. That is Renegade, my number 3. This is my number 2, Heroes of Tennefer, a 1 to 4 player game published by Broken Mill. It is a fully cooperative or solo game. You are dungeon delving into this game, but what's so much fun and unique, you once again, like most games, start with a basic set of cards. Actually, you start with 6 0 cards and 6 level 1 cards. So yeah, your deck starts terrible. And then 1 special card for your specific character. But the best part about this game is every enemy you defeat turns into a card into your deck, and I think that's so much fun. So you delve into these different dungeons. You can decide which dungeon you want to go into depending upon level, and you don't have to do a level 1 right away, although I recommend it. You can choose, you can jump around to different levels. The top enemy is revealed, so you'll know what that top enemy is, and you'll know what the top enemy card's benefit is once it's in your deck, what it looks like. And so you can use that as your advantage of, okay, do I want that card in my deck? I kind of do, so maybe I'll go there so I can get it into my deck. Once you decide that you want to delve into that specific dungeon, you go in there, you fight enemies. How you do that is you'll reveal the top 3 cards of your deck. If you're playing cooperatively, you can decide, okay, do I want to keep that hand or discard it? If you're playing solo, you need to make sure that after you've done all the drawing, you have to be able to defeat the enemy, otherwise you get kicked out of the dungeon. But what's really unique is anytime that you cannot draw any more cards and you haven't defeated an enemy, that's when you get kicked out. Or you can choose on your own, after you've defeated an enemy, I think I'm just going to leave that dungeon. Then you push up the time on the track. As you go, what your goal is to level up enough that when your time runs out and you get to the boss, you can actually take the boss out. Also, each dungeon will have a reward. And so if you can clear out that specific dungeon, you then will gain a specific reward. So that also can help you decide, do I want to go into that room or not? In the game, you will be looking for many ways to get rid of those level 0 and even level 1 cards in your deck. And as you play, you're going to level up that deck, and it is so much fun. You take out this ogre, all of a sudden I have a 2 damage card in my deck. When you flip it, you remember, oh yeah, that's what it was like when I took out that ogre. Now, I will say this game is not for you if you don't love a fair bit of randomness, because first of all, you will go into a dungeon and then you're revealing 3 cards from your deck, and if you like them, you keep them. If you don't, you discard and draw 3 more. Sometimes you just get unlucky with your draws. Second of all, sometimes the cards that you draw or enemies that you defeat don't really match your deck. And so you'll be defeating enemies and you're going, yes, I'm taking them out. And then you put them into your deck and you're going, I don't want those cards. They stink. And so sometimes that can happen and you can kind of spiral. I will say this game is a spiraling game. So if you start doing poorly, you're going to continue to do poorly. It's hard to dig yourself out, but if you're playing and having fun, who even cares? I think I've lost every game that I've done on the channel. I know that I've lost. I lose over 60%, 70% of the time, but I'm okay with that because when I do win, first of all, it feels awesome. And second of all, it's all about the journey in this game, that slow ramp up of your deck, taking out those enemies, putting them into your deck, seeing how your deck is growing, and just seeing the different types of enemies and cards that you can have in your deck. It's definitely not a game for everyone, but I will say, especially cooperatively, you really care about what your other players are doing, because depending on how much damage they do, you have to figure out how much damage you need to do. So when I was playing this with Barrett, if he could only do 3 damage, then I'm like, oh, I need 4 more to be able to take that guy out. So I need to make sure that my deck can even do that. And so you really have to keep tabs of what's in your deck, what's left in your deck, and also work together to defeat those enemies. Definitely like that. Heroes of Tennefer, a high recommend, super high recommend from me. Number 1, and this should come as no surprise for anyone that has been watching the channel recently, I am in love with Imperium Classics or Imperium Legends. They're from the same line, there's 2 different boxes. This is a 1 to 4 player competitive game, but you can play it solo as well. I think that's our only competitive only game on this list. I am hopeful that Mike and I can come up with a variant for co-op. More to come on that. It is published by Osprey Games. So in this game, what you're doing is you choose one of the 8 or 16 civilizations, depending on if you have one box, the classics, or just the legends, or both of them. And you're trying to score more victory points than the dummy player. The dummy player then can be any of the other civilizations in either of the 2 boxes. They'll come with a chart on how to activate their cards. They will try and compete for cards, gaining victory points, gaining the treasure cards or fame cards, and you're also going to be doing that. At the end of the game, you compare points to see who wins. Why is this game so good? Well, each civilization has a 100% different setup at the get-go. So there's no, hey, you start with the same basic cards. First thing that I love. Second thing that I love, each deck has its own nation deck of cards. What that means is every time that you empty out your deck and you shuffle in your cards, you're going to shuffle in a nation's card or a development card, depending upon where you are within your nation. Those are all unique to your specific nation. So every time you play, if you choose a different civilization, it's going to be totally different. I've just recently did a playthrough of the Arthurians, and they didn't even want their nation cards because they didn't want to get to their last card, their Ascension card, because then bad things happen. That's totally different than when I played the Vikings, who all they wanted to do was push through their nation's cards as quickly as possible. Each civilization feels so different, and I would highly recommend, if you are interested in that, to get the Legends box, because that Legends box has some really unique and interesting civilizations. Every single civilization will have different things that they're better at and they're not as good at. Hey, the Romans, they're very good at building, so they've got more prosperity cards to get more resources than other civilizations. But the Egyptians, they can entomb their cards and they can get more victory points because of that. The Arthurians are going on quests, so they're trying to complete quests, and they don't even care about what's in the marketplace as much. I will say the other thing I love about this game is, unlike most of these deck builders, you have to get enough, resource generation to be able to buy cards from the marketplace. Totally different. This game, you have abilities that just say acquire or break through. That means that you will gain any of the cards from the marketplace or potentially dig for specific cards. No card has an inherent value. I really like that. I'm no longer spending time building my deck up to get 1,800 recruits so I can buy that one hero that looks awesome. No, if I get a card that lets me acquire, I'm going to acquire this card. However, there's these unrest cards, and if I acquire versus breaking through, I have to take those unrest cards, which are negative points, and also if that deck runs out in a solo game, you lose. So you have to find ways to get that unrest back out of your deck. So cool. So many different things. There's so many facets to the game, and I would say that when you, or if you, I should really say when, because you should get this game. When you get this game, I do recommend watching a playthrough before reading or while reading the rules, because I did feel like the rules, albeit have everything in there, the rules don't explain how you actually play the game. It just explains the different phases, if that makes any sense. As you watch a playthrough, it'll make a lot more sense. You only have 3 actions in the game, but you have 5 exhaust abilities, and the more challenging the civilization, usually the more exhaust abilities you can trigger and all of that. So it becomes more complex, the more complex of a civilization that you are choosing to play. And that is something that I also find is a huge benefit. They've rated all of the civilizations, so hey, don't start with the Arthurians or the Utopians. Go ahead and start off with the Qin Dynasty. They're only a level 3 difficulty. I really appreciate that, especially from someone who maybe doesn't have as much time to play games as I would like. I know where to start and I know where to jump to once I want to get in deep. Even though I absolutely love this game, I do know that there's a certain set of people this game isn't for. 1, people who only have 30 to 45 minutes to play. This game isn't for you. Every game I've played has lasted a minimum of an hour, sometimes up to an hour and a half. I do feel like sometimes the game overall overstays its welcome. You build this awesome engine, you're doing these really cool things, and then you just kind of have to wait till the end game triggers. That's okay for me, but some people, that might be a deterrent. I also know some people might have a hard time with everything's not 100% historically accurate. I've gotten that as a comment on a lot of my videos. I am totally okay with that, but I'm not a historian. If you are a historian thinking that everything's going to make total historic sense, it's not. And then finally, I will say the component quality, I mean, the art is amazing. And this is how card art should be going forward. Do you see this full art? I love it. That is how these deck builders should be. They've got this black text with the white, black background with the white text so you can read it easily. I absolutely love that. But the component quality of the tokens, it's pretty poor. I mean, they're not even great cardboard. And that's your progress tokens, that's your population. And why would they do this? They have population that's worth 1, but they've got 2 population on it. So people have had a hard time understanding all of that. The materials has 3 symbols on it, yet it's only worth 1. And so it's hard for people to understand that. So if that looks like it could be a deterrent for you, then yeah, this isn't for you. But for me, this is a game I will never get rid of. I love it to pieces solo. I'm hoping to find a cooperative variant because I'd love to play this with my wife cooperatively because she loves civilization building. So there you have it. That's my top 10 deck builders. Hopefully one of those might sound interesting to you and you can go ahead and pick it up. All of those have playthroughs on the channel, so feel free to check those out. And as always, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you at the next stop.